Okay, guys and gals. The crickets doesn't mean you get comfortable with the crickets. What it means is you're being crickets. And that's not a good thing. I keep saying this every week. It's not just enough to know what you read and things that you find out and the research that you have. You got to put it together in a sense that you can use it. Some of the stuff I'll talk about isn't useful for maybe most of anybody. Certainly not anybody if you're not going to use any of it. I try to use the details in the news, so-called, the notice to us, that which we can see are tactics, techniques, strategies, occurrences that are being used against us right where you live. And our non-action to these things, or our non-awareness of these things, or even our awareness without responding or acknowledging these things, is what we were really given, that we were admonished to not let happen. Now, I use some of these words, and it may sound like I'm all patriotic. It's just a matter of fact for me anymore. We either have these things to do and do them, or we're really subject to whomever is running their plan. And that's the beginning and the end of it for me. So when I'm saying things that sound patriotic, I'm telling you these are the things that have been set before us that we respond through. That is the only thing that people seem to respond to in our dialogue. Part of this issue of me talking on certain aspects doesn't mean that I actually embrace those, more than to say this is the subject matter that everyone's familiar with. I'll speak through that, and this is the thing we have to agree with, or if we don't, at least the way I'm seeing it, and I don't see many people coming back to say that I'm wrong, or so wrong that we need to really rethink this, which I'm always asking people for, if it's there. What I seem to try and tell you and explain to you all is how we need to start thinking in order to stop the nonsense against us, and if we don't, it continues. It's just that simple. I don't know what more to say. It's kind of, you talk about natural law, that's a natural law. And then we got all our foibles I tell you about, and how people are knowing us for our own. It's not like there was somebody who wrote the list on how to exploit people. That you learn that as you go through life, if you tend to look at doing that. Look at the news today. It's rife with people that learn how to exploit other people. Now, before we go too far, and I will lose this is, I think, BTW RLM 240 for those of you on Recast or Pastcast or Prodcast. And thank you again, Jules at UCY.tv for doing all that. Again, I understand I'm on in the morning. I haven't really checked in the morning over at UCY. You can hear a Pastcast if you don't want to go to the RLM site to get it as a on-demand download. So again, appreciate all the tunings in and whatever you're all doing there and passing the word out. It's helpful. Again, it's just getting the word out. The things we have to do with what we know, not just that we know. So I'll go all over the world to find these evidences of the knowledges of things that are going on and try to bring them back to where you live, and that could be wherever you live around the world. I reference it to the United States because I'm focused more on the laws that I'm I will be subjected to, I should say that way, or things that I've actually accepted that I'm subject to. In this case, I would prefer you to see the mining law, which is a grant. I've accepted that grant, so that's the law that I have to follow. That's what subjects me in that choice. Now, in that choice was a trade-off. A lot of things in the world are not such a trade-off. A lot of things are what's happening to you. And a lot of things you just look around and we make every excuse. The fallen nature part of us is people will exploit that part of us that will say, I won't do much with this information. I'm not going to, okay, that's too much for me to deal with. I've got other fish to fry, if you will. I've got a bigger battle to fight. But you never really go to that battle, and that's the crickets. You don't go to the battle, you find that they're waging against you, and you make every excuse to not engage it. You're going to lose that battle, for sure. I mean, if you're not in the fight. So don't fight, become peaceful. That's not how this thing works. That's not my choice either. I'm telling you that if you start insisting on the law that it's been breached, there's a breach to it, and we get accountability back, what we're doing is we're asserting peaceful coexistence. That's what the law does. The law, not the legal, not what passes as I say legal is like policy. I mean the foundational stuff. the stuff that most of all of us don't even really know about, and certainly, and I'm really having some trouble with this lately, certainly do not even know how to affect in their life at all. They don't have a clue. They really don't. And that's not a judgment, it's just the fact of it. I'm dealing with that. I've told you this for forever almost. I'm dealing with this incapacity in us. And I don't understand it. I actually don't understand it. And that's why I keep suggesting, you don't have to listen to me. Just listen to what I'm telling you about what's our problem, and then go get that black and white in your eyes and get it in the places that you're going to be confronted with. And that seems to be our own government, so-called. And I tell you, it's not really the government. That's just this inert framework. We breathe life into a framework, a fictional framework, instead of really focusing on the people with utilizing the color of that framework that are hurting us. And there's mechanisms around that we can do that with. Now that's, again, as I come to the broadcast, I have different thoughts than what I put on my tab. So I've got to somehow go from the local to the global with this, because it's all the reflection of what you're up against in the world. A lot of you haven't heard. There's nothing really new that I'm actually saying. I'm just trying to bring it to you in different ways that it shows us every week. This is the reality that we're in. We got to stop this fluff that because we've read a couple passages somewhere. Like, again, I'm kind of critical a bit about people that read the Constitution and that's all they do. They don't have a clue that the laws, they'll complain about it. They'll look around the government, the people in the government violating it, but they don't know the remedies that are built in to show you a couple things. And I don't even want to go to say what that is. When you start doing it, you'll see that there's a whole other problem. It's not just the Constitution. The Constitution is fulfilled in these laws. It may not be fulfilled in the policies. And the policies are what legislatures do now. So all of you all that do the study to find out and want to complain about, oh, well, this is about the corporatization of the government. Well, go use that then. If you know so much, go use it. I do. It's really kind of interesting. It's almost, I can't say it's fun, but it's fun. I don't mean fun in the way that, I'd rather do other things. So it's not fun. It's stealing my life. My life is about done. I'm done. And I'm finding out that it was a big ruse everywhere we look, and they're preying upon this thing. But it's fun at the point of, well, if I'm going to have to be in this, I can really make some trouble. And I don't mean just for being trouble. I can out these people. I can get right into that system and say, okay, here's it. This is what we're playing. You forced me in here. You're going to have to deal with what mess I'm going to make because you're not following your own laws. Understand what I'm saying here? They made a corporatization of things. Okay, let's use it, folks. Don't make an excuse to it. Don't just call it out. Use it. It's my main complaint about the Bundy thing. Use the corporatization. Use that law that said that they went to districts. As against their landed rights, that's irrelevant to them. Why don't they challenge that? Why don't they, as I commented, there was a whole, and we went, and Twitter went to much more characters, and I was trying to reserve myself, but when I get into the law discussion, it's a little bit hard to constrain myself, and Grimner caught me. Said I was making good use of the 288 characters now, instead of the 140. And I said, well, that's good, better than a bad use. And I did try to confine myself, but the point is that there's some things that have to be said now. We have the ability to do a little bit better. And I still think I'm doing okay. I don't have to spend the time now to worry about which the I can remove. So there's a little advantage in the little bit expansion that we can talk to. But Mike, I was a discussion and dialogue about the Bundy trial. And I said, why is everybody, and it had to do with a reporter, a legitimate reporter who at least Vince easily believes, and I haven't really followed it, but he believes that she's doing a fairly accurate report. I think Maxine Waters, no, that was anyway, it doesn't matter. Don't get into these people. She's doing, that's the reporter. Maybe her name's Maxine and that's the extent of it. She's doing a fair response. Well, I looked at the condition. I said, why is everybody taking this judge's decision and just agreeing to the authenticity of the judge? Why does no one insist on challenging that? And if it's not a challenge, if it's just to ascertain that it is true, the authenticity that she is in the court that she's at, why is nobody challenging that up front? It's really a real main problem. So everyone speaks that they're talking about the Constitution. They speak that they're upholding certain rights, and I'm saying, well, you're not in defending the Constitution. You're fighting some charges that have been levied against you. They're going to come after, and they're going to prove the elements beyond a reasonable doubt. If you focus on everything else like the Constitution instead of that, you're going to lose. That's a fatal historic record that's going to be made for everyone. So why would you allow someone sitting in the seat of decision to sit there without being authenticated? Is really a problem for me. When they said question authority, whoever said that, they were not joking. Whoever that was. And there's a way to do that. We got to the hippie crowd in the 60s and 70s, and then broke into disco, and question authority. No, everyone didn't tell you how. They just said do it, and then everyone forgot it. And so here we are today, doing nothing, just complaining about everything and doing nothing, and they win. The other side has got the plan, wins. And for the record, I think Vin-E in the RLM chat, Maxine Bernstein, for those of young Frankenstein movie fame. Okay, so why aren't we doing what's the basics in ascertaining the legitimacy of every authority that presents itself? It's really it's a crime in my mind that we don't do it. It's a crime to ourselves. This is the criminal accessory we are to ourselves. They're going to impose themselves. Why don't you understand about that and become have some? I like to call it an offense. You become offensive to them in your defense. And there's, I'm not saying it's silver, and don't ever think I'm ever talking silver bullets here. What I'm saying is that you make an open record of what the reaction to that is. If you want to try and authenticate something and they refuse, wouldn't that be a public record for the court of public opinion better than making everyone think you're talking about the Constitution and I'm fighting for the Constitution? Then you get run down in a court that's completely incompetent and you wonder why? Because you never checked it, you never challenged it, and then you let these representatives called attorneys step in your way, and as soon as you took that on, became incompetent? No, go in and use the system for the corruption it is. Expose that. We're having so much more effect to do these kinds of things. We're having so much more effect to show how, once you understand, once you really know about something, and I have to advisedly say that, I know something to the point we know it. I don't know what we don't know, so that's going to always be the hanger. But we know enough, I think. Rancho42 on Twitter, I've been suggesting to you all go read USC, what was that, 28 USC 81 to 133 or whatever it is. Read it! Those of you who want to know about the district courts. The district, I'm talking about the law, 71. You want to know about it? Go read. It's right there in the statutes. And you're going to find there's no competent court that can happen in Nevada. Use it. Why are you all fighting about it? Just, look, there's corporate courts. So what? No one cares about that until you go try to use it. And I'll tell you, the system doesn't want you to do that. So why are you not doing it? But there's tactics that they use against us. There's mind control. There's brainwashing. There's all kinds of stuff we'll complain about, but they're doing to us, and they make us ineffectual, that I've been broadcasting for years and years to try and give everyone the ideas of how to identify the things that they're going to be up against. You have to strip from your mind that there's anything of justice right now available to us. There's a complete denial of justice. I've got a default judgment proving that for anybody that would want to look at it. This is not my opinion. This is exactly what we, in earnest, in truth, looking at what we were dealing with, in all honesty, looking at what the heck happened to the America we thought was there. And I'm saying I thought was there. And I think I found it, folks. And part of me says it may have never existed. That was another deception. We were duped. Okay, now we're in that battlefield. What do? You got treachery everywhere now you've been born into. By whatever means, however you want to find it, it's all whatever is sitting there. How do you defeat all that anyway is really the point, in my mind. Because if you don't, it defeats you at every turn. And we become a bunch of whiners and complainers. And I don't want to see that for any of us, and that's my frustration. It's not about you, it's just for us. Whether or not the extent of my knowledge will work in every case, that can't even be made. Don't even throw yourself into that to try and defeat what I'm saying is an excuse. You got to go where you're going to go and try to apply. Hopefully, you can apply a lot of what I'm saying, at least as a start on your journey about this problem. Again, because when you don't, they're parasitically eating from your life, if it isn't your life, upon your life. And they put in our mind, the most powerful tool that they have against us is our own mind. And we're really looking at a steep hill to climb to figure a lot of this out. But it's plausible to work through the point and get to a point. And I think I'm my own example for that. Of whether anybody wants to ever see that or not is really it's not your quest either. But I'm seeing now that if you don't do the quests that way, you're not in control of your own life because someone else is. And you can avoid it for all you want, but if one day it comes to your, while you're avoiding it, you agree to be parasitically fed from. You become the host. Why do the computers say host and client? What do you think? They're telling us everywhere, if we look very carefully, what you are, you user. And they put you on the negative side of that user. If you understood that user is also a trust, and you found out where the obligation they have to protect that user is, maybe your life would become a little different. At least you'd be able to have a word in your mouth about how they don't have a right to trespass, and that trespass is not just a mere little violation, not little traffic ticket. No, these are the highest level crimes. Now, what am I saying? What am I saying there? I'm saying that you now make the public record for the public opinion. You expose these are the highest crimes. These are not some petty thing that you see people doing through the color of government. But do we have that record? No. Look at, and I'm not going to beat down on this thing with the Bundys, but did they do it either? No. They talked a lot about stuff. Well, there's a couple actions that moved that actually Ryan Bundy's starting to do, but he gets shut down. He actually admitted they get mocked, and I'm on the Twitter saying, why don't you use that? That shows systemic bias. That shows a prejudice in the system that he can't get justice. Where he 3 times asked for the evidence from a camera, and he couldn't get the judge to listen to him, and then what it took to get this camera become in there was a bar member saying so, and then pushing forward, and they finally get it out. That was evidence of systemic bias or judicial prejudice sufficient to cause fraud in the court against Ryan. Why aren't they moving on that? Why aren't they moving that to a collateral attack, not a motion giving them? A motion gives the judge. Does anybody know this? The motion gives the judge discretion to decide the question. Why would you hand the criminal the answer, the right to make an answer? Do we even understand the most basic things that are going on? And so, again, I look up at my tab is so far away from here. I can't get there from here, folks. And I told myself I've got to go right through. There's a lot of information today just to kind of tie some things together about how they get us distracted, how they get us we so focused on what we think we need to know, how if we become the next guy or gal to make the next observation of the minutia that they want us to keep consuming. Menudo, I think, is a Mexican. In fact, in the RLM chat, I saw in the hamster wheel of gameplay that's going on in the Jeopardy game, whatever the heck that game is going through. They answer the questions. Tripe. I think Vin E got that answer. Tripe. The menudo. This is what you put in menudo. It's this minutia, all this stuff you get to go pour through, consume for you to waste your time. That's what they give to us. What I'm looking for is what do those informations that we are given tell us about who we're dealing with and what in the world that we've never been told may be there to defeat us if we didn't know this is the level of gameplay we're into. And so this is why I go around the world for this notice and this news to show you it's all there to show us who we're dealing with. It's all ends up coming, there's a fractal. And all this treachery is in the world. It's in the world. It's local to you. It's what you're going to be dealing with. It's what you're avoiding whenever you do what you do. And you end up having to pay a bill that's really, really not something that you use. As everyone wants to talk about that taxation is theft. Do something about it. If it's theft, go get accountability. If it's theft, what's your problem? Why are you walking the accessory against yourself? If you know it's theft, go get remedy. And bunches of you try to do it when you're going to find that there really doesn't want to be remedy because you find out you're living in that open-air prison, whether that's constructed in print or paper or wherever, records, or whether that's physical, is irrelevant. To my mind, it's still the same point. You can make up your excuses all you want. You can have the First Amendment right in prison, and it doesn't mean you're free. When you get around that little conundrum, you'll be all right. But I try to go through the world every week. People may agree with me. People fall. I see it, and I thank you on Spreaker. There's a listener who puts lots of comments. I don't do the commenting thing. I'm concentrating on what I'm going through. Like right now, how I'm going to go from this part of the discussion to where my tabs start. But thank you for commenting. I can get back in later. And I noticed I lost you in a couple points last week. That's fine. I'm talking on things that I know are there, and it just shows you can disagree with me, but go research if you disagree with what I'm saying. I don't have a problem with anybody disagreeing, but go prove that I'm wrong. Go prove I'm not trying to instruct you in a direction. And that's just I'll talk with you there that way on air this way. I can't really talk with you real live, but if you don't agree with me, go research some more. I try not to be erroneous at all. I mean, I've been wrong, I'll come back a week later, oh yeah, I made a misstatement. Well, the word misstatement is different than a principle understanding or a remedy step or a way to look at things. Again, I want better interaction with the social network. I'm not getting it. So, even like, someone comes on and I find out that this is, it's like a hedonistic, oxymoronic, hedonistic hypocrisy. I'm finding the social media, as it just came out on one of the posts in Minds.com. I didn't realize, and this is how neophyte I am, a noob on this stuff is, I didn't realize that when you post on a website, if someone posts a contrary view or a different observation than what you thought the world was like, you can delete that observation. You can delete whatever negative, you can make your record look like everyone's thumbing upping you. I just noticed that. So I responded to that. But it looks like that if the words I could only come up with is, you come up with this oxymoronic identity relative to what you're going to speak, and it's self-centered, hedonistic joy that you put out in the postings, and then and your position becomes hypocritical to reality. And so I come up with this observation. It's oxymoronic, hedonistic, hypocrites. That seems to be social media at the point of action. Action doesn't exist. It's just us throwing a bunch of information around. And for myself, I come along and say, hey, listen, I can guide you to some things to go check out to solve to at least orient your problem. And if you want to solve it, I'll give you enough there too. Those that are aware to that, accept it. They don't have to be right. It's just I give them a direction. Those that have a self-conflicted, they've taken the pills, folks. I tell them, get off the pills. Stop the red pill, stop the blue pill nonsense. Get off the pills. Stop the self-absorbed addiction. You're going to have to start doing something. And you're going to have to understand how you're susceptible to being played. You're going to have to understand that there's the people in the world that play for real. And until we all come to terms with that, because I'm not wired that, it's the Machiavellian part. It's the real brutal part of reality of the life. And so we get a little bit of that. Let me get over there now. What happened here last week right after the broadcast, I can jump now. We find out that go back over now in the world in the Middle East, some big shakeup started happening. And I want us to look at these notices to us as there's lots of levels going on here in the adjustment that went from, we're going to take out Syria, we're going to show you how you live in the West. I told you it was the carnival mirror for how we live in the West. And it's distorted just enough we don't recognize what's happening over there. Our government in the United States of America, the United States government is doing to our people here. And if you don't think there's a destruction over the last decades or so, you just go to Detroit and tell me that doesn't look like a bombed out place. About your water system being taken out in Flint. You tell me your water being destroyed everywhere, poisoned everywhere. You don't think you're under a war zone in the United States and the government's helping that? I try to point this stuff out. You can talk about it, but who's doing what about it? I don't know. I don't hear much. I'm not saying nothing's happening, folks. Please, those of you that are doing something, do not take offense to that. I'd be more expect the people that make the excuse to take offense to what I say. In other words, I don't really although I'd like to see more because there would be more people understanding, I can see why people don't come behind the woodshed and listen to learn and then do. They don't want to hear the truth, actually. Now, the truth is a funny thing, but I think you all know what I'm saying. I don't come with anything lesser than what you'll find when you go look. Whether or not you may come away with the same interpretation, that's certainly open to debate as well, if we would debate it. If not, it's perfectly fine to have a different opinion, but you at least have to have a basis for it. You have to have a basis to understand of our failings and how we can be preyed upon. What we see in the world is just brutality that comes under the color of authority and what's supposed to be, how people are supposed to live. You don't think this reflects on your inner idea of what sovereignty is to watch this stuff in the world? You better rethink this one. And this is what came up at the end of the last broadcast that came on. I wouldn't necessarily touch it. I wasn't going to touch it, but so many things are rolling out that come back domestic and reflect, even as ideas and things that show us that we have people in this country. You think you want to talk on an agenda and running a political party helping you out, that the politicians are there to do anything, that the financing of this thing goes on the way it works on, that any of that's there for helping you. Even those that would say no, it's not, and laugh at what I just said, you still agree to let it go on by letting it go on. But if you have any consideration that there's these, we're all really nice about it, and that you don't have to assert something objectively against this global oppression. I don't know about you, actually. I wonder about people's thoughts. But here we go on and jump back. What happened in Middle East is really kind of fascinating as well. Though I don't have the time to really get in deep with it, and I don't intend to, I do want to understand, I want to mention these things to show you, we're watching Machiavelli principles or worse going on in the Middle East right now with Saudi Arabia. We heard a little bit of this news. I made a comment here and there as we went along just to keep the guidance of what was going on, keeping tabs of the dynamic over there, because I want you to understand the underlying problem for the United States, the people of the United States, is that the United States government stuff will do what you see over there to you, and it's going to use Israel to help it. Is the underlying meme here, the message or theme here, and we can see that how the players are. It's not conjecture anymore. We don't need WikiLeaks. We haven't need WikiLeaks to expose any of this at all. I've talked about all this myself before, and I'm kind of astonished that any of this stuff becomes still an ongoing question, that all the alt-right gurus and documentarians speak like they know what's up. This is already planned ahead of time. If you saw how these criminals, these world oppressors work. Now here's a whole bunch of neat stuff coming down to let us know. Purge of Saudi princes, businessmen, widens, travel curbs imposed to watch what a kingdom does. Kingdom done locks everything down in a kingdom. Are you locked down now at the TSA, folks? If you don't think this is a different thing. A campaign of mass arrests in Saudi Arabian royals, ministers, and businessmen expanded on Monday after a top entrepreneur was reportedly detained in the biggest anti-corruption purge in the kingdoms of affluent elite in its modern history. Now, there'll be a lot of names. I'm not going to read too much here. I'm talking about Phase 1 implementation. We heard this guy named Salman. He's one of the sons of the existing king. He was brought in to be the crown prince and the king to come. Right after that, you started seeing some shaking up, and this guy started consolidating power. They're talking about this being a purge. I'm not so sure, and I'm not going to get into whether the accuracy. What it looks like, they're going after the money. We have some indication of that. They're actually after the money, and they're actually after allegiance, because the people they're constraining are actually they are promoters of the existing king's position. Maybe not necessarily this 32-year-old kid Salman's position, but the king. They're not dissident of the king itself. So the so-called purge is an interesting problem to get in. The point is that these people, there's a shakeup going on of pretty epic proportions, I assume, given who the players are with Syria and that failed plan. And don't miss that the Saudis get involved in every failed plan that they've been involved in, and don't forget all the other players with the Sauds, okay? So what caused me to think about this was when they started getting the names, and yes, it's hard to keep up with the names, but one of the names they talked that was picked up by this was arrested. Saudi prince owns top 5 floors of Vegas Mandalay Bay. Guns carried down 3 floors. Question, was that this guy, Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, is one of the Saudi family people that were arrested under this so-called corruption. Now, I understand, and I don't know, but I understand that, governmental this family corruption at the highest levels is rampant. It's been going. It's part of how you do business, I suppose. And I'm just going on the information I can find. It's pretty universally understood. So corruption is really the cover story. The problem I had with this was that I took note, and I didn't make a big deal about it because I don't want to get into all these names. I don't know who they are. But this Al-Walid popped up in the paddock thing. It just just by chance, this Saudi Arabia, and I'm thinking as soon as I saw that, I go, well, there's a connection. Weren't the Sauds involved with we also hear the Saudis are involved with 9/11? Okay, so we got a big, deep play going on here. And so it comes out that right after this kid gets into and consolidates some power in the military, the police, and all this in Saudi Arabia, he goes after so-called anti-corruption people. He's after the billionaires, all the money. Like he's gonna pull up that $500 billion that you heard Trump and Kushner to say that was coming from the United States. So this is all starting to tie together at some level. I'm not telling you it does tie together. I'm telling you, look at the play going on here. Look at how people are working behind the scenes when they want something to accomplish. And if you're not at that level, you're probably getting run down. Now, let me put it to it in a different way, because I'm not at that level, but I can defeat some of this. Not this stuff, but the other stuff that happens locally to you, where people are really well organized and really own the top 5 floors, and then attack your own town in different ways. That you have to find where the weak links are, and you have to be aware of that. Go back to this thing with the paddock, and I told you we did that broadcast. I did that broadcast and put it out there, got good reception on that. Didn't get last week good reception on the project. I guess the name and the title isn't sensational enough for everybody. Just as important information every week, I think. But here we have the paddock. This is a plan. This is interestingly tied to the Saudi prince family, that now is going through a purge, the owner of which is one of the ones arrested. We also find out that in that time, and I didn't track this down, but I'd heard about it. I do have a link. It'll show on the Blogcaster. This Salman kid was also in Vegas at that time, at the Tropicana. There's now video as well, and I'm not going to qualify it myself, of this kid walking out with armed guards, cops with shotguns and things, walking out pretty quickly through the casino. The kid likes to gamble, and he's not in his robes. So now you see a costume and a uniform that gets people to believe he's got authority. Just a fat kid. If it's a kid, he's a fat kid. And no offense to fat people. I mean, I'm just talking. He's just not some 32-year-old, soldier guy or fit in his own life. No, he's a slug. He walks with feet stuck out like a waddle, and if that's the guy, that's the king. This he's just an abuser of people. Not because he's fat and he walks with a waddle, but because he puts on the air of a king, and he's just a slouch. He's a criminal. He has armed guards, folks. And you have to understand, in the United States of America, to have cops come in, innocent people sitting in the casino being told to raise their hands because this Saudi prince to come and king is walking through the room at the time that the paddock, the Mandalay effect is happening, is pretty insulting. This is what your government will do, is I guess the point. It takes its resources to protect scumbags like this in the world. People that will attack other people, innocent people. People that will purge, so-called purge, will consolidate power into themselves with a mind to go after other people. In this case, this kid, Salman, was, I understand, ejected from his town, his country, by his grandfather, if I get this right, and said, we don't want you to go, stop talking about going after Persia. Well, what's Persia, folks, but Iran? Look at the Middle East, and what are they after but Iran? And this kid's now coming to power. And he waddles like a duck. He's got the power of the gun to protect him walking through a casino. It was a pretty big insult in my mind. All happening at the time that the Mandalay effect is going down. Because the thought that maybe he was actually had an assassination attempt. I don't quite see that in the video. He wasn't that protected. He was protected just by a walkthrough. But to have people, Americans, have to put their hand up because this guy in a T-shirt, folks, a T-shirt and sandals and shorts, with a purse, walks through the room, that you have to put your hands up, is really the height of watching a servient people in their mind. As long as they get to be entertained, they'll even raise their hands up to some joker walking through the room because some cop with a shotgun says so. I hope again, I'm not getting into the geopolitics. I'm trying to show you that we are a subject people in our mind. We're really kind of done. We have to fix that. We're not going to fix those people in the casino. We're going to fix those that come to behind the woodshed and start figuring this out, and then take that knowledge and go out and start working with it. So I'm talking so far out of my expectations in this case. I don't even know. At some point, I do have a question why I even talk about it. But you're watching. This comes to roost at home pretty quickly. Now, this kid, Salman, Mohammed bin Salman, was at the Tropicana. He gets escorted out under armed guard. There was a thought that the Mandalay. There's a thought going on that the Mandalay was a cover fire, literally, for an assassination attempt. Now, I'm not going to say that it was. I'm saying that all these plausible possibilities could be working on. I didn't see the imperative of an assassination attack with this kid walking through with sandals and a t-shirt and shorts, walking through with 8 or so cops with riot shotguns and AK. I don't know. Excuse me. It would have been the other rifle, the American rifle. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter. I don't pay attention to all that. It's just that you see it. You see Americans being put servient to a Saudi king to come. Now, we see a purge happening after the Mandalay effect. There's all kinds of stories. I don't have a time and a mind to go check it down. This Patel guy wasn't who he said he was. You don't get to live in this other crown prince's 32nd floor purchase unless you have connections to the Saudi government, which means he wasn't just a gambler. So, we got a whole lot of things that can come together. They're willing to come to your country and make you bow to this guy by putting your hands up. That set up and kill people here to cover their whatever's going on in the Saudi, and the government of the United States is cool with that. Because I guess the other point here. They're willing to kill people to do whatever they want, which is historically known. This is not new. I'm telling you and pointing out, this is very plausible and possible that this was coming down in the United States. And the government really allows it. Remember, this is the same time when as the purge goes on, the Saudi government pulls out a legislative prime minister, I think it was, or president, and the Hariri guy, and calls him back like he orders them like some servant to the king. And then they kidnap him. And they make him make a statement that he's abdicated his office. Why is the UN to call out this problem? Is the problem. So the UN are going to focus, all these things come around, like the mandala. You want the mandala effect? Look at the fractal mandala that we grow. Each coming back to the center of the problem. Going way out, no matter how far out in the solar system, you're going to come back to the center, to the sun. You're going to come back to see the problem. Now, when are you going to do something about it? So, in the question of this so-called consolidation of power, whatever's going on, they're attacking people that are supportive of the king. They're doing it in the United States. Apparently there could have been a hit on the new king to come. Not kingdom come, king to come. For Saudis. Making servants with Americans over some guy the same guy walking through, in slippers no less, walking through a casino hall, of all places. I mean, to me that's the epitome of the problem in a way, but so the problem is, another thing is, what's going on in the politics of Saudi Arabia? Who are they dealing with? Well, we know that the Saudis are all involved with the United States. The United States here, just understand, it's the decider. Understand it's the decider as heavily conditioned or constrained or advanced by Israel. The Sauds also look like the puppet mercenary as well, and I want us to look at that the government certainly, it's not a secret, we want to point it out so we don't lose it. People will use mercenaries against you. So they don't get caught. That's the other thing. Plausible deniability. But there's a shake-up going on in Saudi, but they don't want to get it too shaken up, so it comes out for everyone that's talking about, that this Salman kid is going to be, that the king there is going to abdicate his throne. He comes out now because they do have a problem with the political, if this plan doesn't work, the Saudi government's in trouble. If they don't have absolute control, if the king doesn't have absolute control of this, they could lose this whole thing. The people that they arrested underneath the trumped-up charges, and it might have been trumped up Kushner charges, aren't going along with the allegiance pledge that they're being given, I understand, to have these charges dropped. Well, if they haven't charged the drop, well, that's just an extortion and a coercion, isn't it? So the government is not beyond causing these things. We see that in our own country. When are we going to stop making stories about ourselves, about the elite, the special place that the United States is, when we can see all these things happening to our country? You don't think it's a monarchy? You look at what happens to your people. It's how the same thing happens here as happens there. Abdicating is unthinkable. Saudis deny King Salman will relinquish throne to his son. So they got to come out and say that this is not he's not going to give up. And I didn't anticipate that it was. I think this kid is actually having to consolidate his power. He has to, this is like the knights. This is daggers and swords and things. I mean, this is cloak and dagger stuff. It's pretty cool to watch, but this is what everyone's agreeing can happen and does happen. And I have to just keep saying the United States is a part of it. The United States and Israel is a part of it. I do not find it inconsequential that the Balfour Declaration came up and all this starts happening again with May bringing in her support for the establishment of the creation of the Zionist condition. And then we see the connection. Remember, Sauds are all murdered. Remember the hegemony, not the hegemony too, but the hegemony that the petrodollar, so-called, is with the Sauds as well. And they're on some financial straits on top of it. That's partly what they're doing with this financial coup. They got hundreds of billions of dollars the billionaires are working with, their own family, that they can just absorb by, like they do search and seizures here. See, there's no, where the rule of law and democracy rule, you have no justice. I want you to never forget that. This is where they spread rule of law and democracy. You're watching it. It's mob rule by a minority. In other words, you are divided, and they're the actual ones in control. That's how they do your local codes and stuff. They got a few people that sit in the seat of decision that you haven't figured out how to control, and a minority causes friction in the community, dividing it, and then they get their way. And then you're all under the servitude. It's a brilliant plan. I mean, these people really have worked this out pretty clearly. Pretty easily, and we are duped all the time. So they have a problem. The abdication is unthinkable. Well, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen, folks. But they got to be careful on what this thing gets done. But so let's keep going on this thing. Who's the players? Who's influencing our lives? What's this carnival mirror that we see happening over the Middle East that I can point out is happening here, just in a slight distortion to it all? As I keep telling you, it's all here. It's already here. The illusion in your mind is what keeps you from seeing it. They call these things for spectacularism. We're going to call this headline explosive. Leaked secret Israeli cable confirms Israel-Saudi coordination to provoke war. Because you understand that the Sauds also set up that Lebanon, completely innocent, after they took out they stole away their 1/3 of their government officer, and this Harari guy. He's actually a Saudi as well. And when I found that out, I'd go, how does anybody not see this as a setup for a takedown? That the Lebanese official is actually subject to the Saudi king once he abdicates his own position, which he did. So this is a setup for a takedown. And then right after that, Israel pops up as being part of this question. We always continue this question. Well, is Israel involved with the Sauds and Brits and the coalition and the United States? Is this a question? How many years has this not been a question? That it's still playing out as a question is your notice to how long you will go without taking action against something local to you. This is how they do it. We see now the leaked cable. I don't even know why we need this stuff. I guess it gives us authority. I tell you, you do need the evidence if you want to go along and presume everybody innocent, which I think you should do at some level until you see the scope of the organized crime against you. And when you see a party to that scope, a part of that scheme and artifice, that organized reoccurring racketeering organization, you can pretty well throw everybody in that cup of tea. You can drink it if you want, or you can throw it down the drain. Realize what it is. It's the poison that it is. That Saudi Arabia declared war on itself from Lebanon, with Lebanon not having anything to do with it, after controlling one of its members. And then you look at the map and you say, well, how is Saudi Arabia going to attack Lebanon? It's almost like a physical impossibility. I mean, the Sauds are dependent on American technology, but are they going to really step up and use it that distance for such a small place? They're not likely. So they must have a friend in the region to go try and attack them. Well, who is that but Israel? Their compatriot in all of this, right? So here we have it. The leaked secret Israeli cable confirms Israeli-Saudi coordination to provoke war. What is this Zionist tool that was created in the Balfour Declaration by Secretary of State's letter, no less? Nothing special. Just a letter. Just a wink and a nod of what was going to let on and happen. No, the world said nothing. The UN said nothing. They're all partners to the crime against us. They want to attack Lebanon because they're failing everywhere else. They think the same plan that they tried and failed in Syria is going to work in Lebanon, to give someone a foothold to stop what appears to be they're actually after Hezbollah, which appears to be a people's army. And I don't pretend to be an expert on all this. It's just what I've been reading and trying to find out about it, and the little bits of stuff I can find and dig up real quick, and then make some cogent sense to show us that these people that are out there in the world, the oppressors, play for keeps. And they don't care how they do it, and they don't care who they play with to get it done. Your job is to identify who they play with, because those people that they're associated with all need to eventually go away in the world. Can you stop them immediately? Well, probably not. But can you identify those influences and how those mechanisms work locally to you and stop them there? Yes, you can, and that's what I try to tell you to do all the time. It's not that hard. It doesn't take whole armies of people to do so. So we have a explosive cable comes out and confirms Israel's provocational stance for war in the world. And the United States, the United States government supports that wholly. And why would not wholly, like in religion, although there's some of that behind the scenes, isn't it? There's supposed to be also this cover of religion that they say that they're Jews. No, there might be some people that believe in the religion, the Jewish religion, there, but that's not what the state was created to do. And it wasn't a self-created state like the people started up. They just took advantage of the power struggle that was, or the power, wink and a nod, power control protection that was provided by that Balfour Declaration. And certainly the United States is going to back all that up. So we have another thing here that confirming that Israel is a creation. It's why it's so armored up. And notwithstanding that, the Hezbollah, the People's Army of Lebanon, I mean, my hat's got to come off to some of these people. I can't even imagine how voracious they are in protecting themselves, and rightly so. And I've known a few Lebanese people, really intelligent people, really peaceful and considerate. So my experience at that minimal level, I can't look out in the world and find wrongness in people generally, just for the sake of it. In an organized band and group called nations or pretend nations, absolutely can show that they're all like any government that's going to harm and oppress people. Now, Israel's not even a real setup. It's a creation. It's a tool. It's being used for it's the weapon that it is. It is tasked, and it has its own functions to continue its tasks in order to be a weapon for others. We see this effect here as also in the news. All at the same time, all this coming down, is Saudi Arabia asked Israel to strike Lebanon, as stated by Nasrallah, the Hezbollah. I suppose I could be pronouncing it Hezbollah, but excuse whatever dialect I should be speaking here. It doesn't matter to me. I'm looking at words. I understand what's happening. You should too. But Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah said that Saudi Arabia has asked Israel to strike Lebanon. Now, I don't know what right they had to do that, but you just see these are partners in crime. And they could care less about sovereignty. They could care less about anything on the upper level. And they all will claim that they have problems with, let's say, Iran, but see, that's the problem. That's a setup too, isn't it? The United States wants Iran. Well, what this young kid Salman wants to go off to Persia, what a better candidate. The task to go ahead and try and start another attack on another country like they did in Syria, failing as they are, and it's not over yet for Syria. Syria's got a long battle there. Just because they're breaking down ISIS doesn't mean ISIS goes away, or all the other problems they've got, which the Russian army, the MOD came out to explain, and my mind doesn't work this way, folks, but what Russia has had to deal with has really been impressive. That they've come along what they've done. It's not just their Air Force. What they've had to do on the ground is really an impressive effort. And I'm going to keep that in the neutral. I'm not promoting anybody. I'm saying a supposed sovereign country got attacked, and you see the United States living there now without right. Asked the country that was being attacked, asked the help from another country who came in, and on the surface certainly is doing the job to help protect them. The protection of which Syria would have been done weeks, months, a couple of months after we saw, if Russia hadn't stepped in. Russia has been doing a job I could not have ever thought. I mean, the things that they're dealing with, it didn't even cross my mind of having to deal with. They are dealing with them to get it to the condition where you see. It's not nearly over. They just have one of the major tools of the West broken up in order to keep it from being organized, again, divide and conquer. You see that right there. You see, if you want to defeat someone, you have to divide them down and to conquer them. You're seeing this prove out. It's what they do to you in the United States. They do it on all the Western governments. The governments do that to the people. Again, it's the same story over and over. We're watching the notice to us on how we've been defeated and are continually defeated. What we have to understand and rise up against. But Hezbollah, Secretary General, comes out and tells us they're going to get Israel to come attack us. Now, before I get all like fear-mongering, like I'm saying, I'm understanding the people there understand what's going on. They're not overly concerned that can actually happen or would. And I would have to say, yeah, I'm not so sure if Hezbollah will have to come back to lay off of Syria for a while to go kick Israel's tail. I guess it will. Again. Now, that's not saying that there might not get really get to the point where we are looking at nuclear threats. And that's coming up. There's no question now that Israel has the nuke and why. And so that's becoming now boiling to the surface as everyone's attempting to bring stability back to their nations. So Israel's another tool, as we've been knowing. They're part and parcel to the underlying strife. And then we find out it's just a creation of Britain. And what was fascinating to me is that in that same week we have this big problem with someone from Britain going over to Israel and having high-level meetings. High-level meetings with Israel. Why? And then doing it wrong. I mean, why do you call yourself out? But so on this story where they're also saying, and Nasrallah is also explaining that the Saudis have offered tens of billions of dollars to have Israel go attack Lebanon. So we see the evidence of, at least through Nasrallah, his statement through their intelligence. Israel's just a merc group, a merc gang. I can't give them state status myself. I can't give them the land status. They're acknowledged as occupiers wrongfully. Whatever their rightful claim is has not been actually developed till today. Notwithstanding the admission that it's just a tool created by Britain, by a letter from a Secretary of State, that they are willing to take money to go hurt people. I want you to remember that. I'm pausing. I mean, do you think about this? If you think that people aren't able to be bought off in the world, This is one of the other jokes what's happening in Priti. You think billionaires, you think they can be bought off? At some level, you're beyond. And I think the billionaires that have power and a family of kingship are kind of beyond all the rudiments of control. So this is a whole different ballgame at that level. You think those people really can be bought that way? But we see people can be bought. And it only takes tens of billions to engage Israel. And which means I want to point out that now go dimensionally, multidimensionally, on every level, folks. They can be bought for doing anything, these people. This is a merc gang. This is not a government state. And there's no evidence in my that I've found that proves, that shows that they could be. It's the illusion that everyone wants to continue buying into, and they put the cover terms over it to cover, make costume over it to make it more than what it really is. It's just a gang created by Britain, or protected, the space protected for it to foster and encourage it. Somebody who's doing a reporter back in the Middle East, there was a document that was finally released by the United States government. Remember, I talked to you all the time to be careful on what's omitted, the lie by omission. I've had many discussions about this on broadcast. And someone who's doing a report on Twitter came up and said, here, no, it was somebody down in Argentina, if I remember right. And then it was simply this little Twitter that said, for immediate release, 5 days later, Secretary of State wakes up to the Saudi-inspired crisis in Lebanon. And then it goes on to quote part of the letter the United States State Department issued about supporting Lebanon's national institutions and armed forces. But when you go read the letter, it actually condemns the militia and other things that shouldn't be in Lebanon. And I responded to this position taken by the poster that said that the United States Secretary of State woke up 5 days after this nonsense in Saudi, and the Saudi taking the Prime Minister away from Lebanon and all this other shakeup, and said, is it waking up if the United States doesn't condemn the Saudi Arabia or continues further support in petrodollar hedge of money? It's one thing to say you support the official institutions of Lebanon. It's quite the other to condemn the party who's attacking you. That didn't happen. And then I continue and say, and this is where the 288 characters comes in handy, and if it isn't an armed forces or national institution, that notice appears to target Hezbollah. And then I ask, and these are rhetorical questions, what is the coalition, in quotes, doing in Syria on the same premise? When we look at the totality of who the main player of this whole fiasco in the Middle East is, it's the United States of America. Using whatever tool it can do, it's proxy terrorists, allowing people to come in. It sits there on the land without right, on top of it, facially, directly in Syria's face, facially in face of everybody, the big bully and brute. Among friends, it's used mercs. It's using Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is now doing Israel. Israel and the United States are working together. And then the statement that comes out of the Secretary of State is, we're only going to recognize the national institutions and armed forces. All the rest of that's in there in Lebanon, that's going to be free game. By omission, folks. He doesn't talk about it. They just say they don't support that. Isn't that the same premise that they're in on Syria? And so my take on all this, and all the experts that are looking into this are not necessarily seeing, again, they don't see this part. For all of us here watching this, even though Lebanon the people of Lebanon can't see that it could happen. There's nothing saying that another spring can't pop up over in Lebanon. There's nothing saying that the United States wouldn't allow something to fire up, notwithstanding what the people want. The United States did not come out to condemn the actions of Saudi Arabia. Did not warn Israel not to enter. It said the United States would honor the sovereignty of Lebanon and its national institutions and armed forces, not those that might be in the militia or the people. Now let me get into that. Militia or the people? What's the United States with the Second Amendment? And you see the government, the courts of the government, already trying to slice very thin whether or not a militia is someone that should have an arm or belongs to the state. That's the same thing, folks. It's in this country already. They attempt to try and cut you away from your own. So to me, I see, well, again, what you see happening over in the Middle East, we get to see and witness what's happening here and to us, and if we don't have an awareness of that, these details that slip our awareness are those things that will defeat us eventually. Certainly on the front end, if we're not aware to this, we can't respond. And then we have the other problem. Then we have to be aware and be aware correctly of correct awareness, then correctly act. So we have quite a bit of work to do if we're all still talking to each other and complaining to each other about how much we know about how bad it is, instead of really settling down and doing it. Again, I'm not trying to be a geopolitical analyst here. I'm trying to show you there's a dynamic of oppression in this world that's happening. People are using these dynamics right around you in your neck of the woods, if I can put it that way. So what's this root, this connection? We got this big connection going on between Britain and the United States and Israel again and again and over, using the Sauds and all this other stuff. What might be the impetus? Remember, Kushner and Kushner and Trump went over there right before a lot of this too. And another analyst, literally someone who does this for a living, came out. It was after talking with Bashar al-Assad, and he put up an interview. Another group of people had an interview with this gentleman, and his statement was, it's Anis Nakash. Jared Kushner came to KSA, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The kingdom, folks. We're supporting a kingdom, right? Not even the rule of law and democracy there. It's just a kingdom. To show you how allegiant we are, the United States is to its own supposed cause. But anyway, Jared Kushner, he says, Anis Nakash, came to KSA and said, if you have a problem in securing the amounts, you can take them from the princes and financiers. And so this now brings a new twist, if you will, or another additional complexion, that the Zionist compliant, agreeable, aiding, comforting Kushner went to the Saud and said, listen, you got your money. As a kingdom, if you have your money, it's in all your serf people. It's in your billionaires. It's in what they've made up. You can take all this money. You can use those industries to underwrite more money. And why would they do that, folks? They're supposed to be getting all this money from the petrodollar. It's indicating they're not getting it. It's also indicating they can't fund they're not able to fund this condition that they want to spread around the world. At that level, that's pretty encouraging. What's not encouraging is that's not where the buck stops. The buck stops with where? The United States. The buck stops with Israel. And so we see people in the United States making decisions, and they found the people in the world that'll take their money, whatever, or influence, or toys, or whatever the heck it is, to go hurt people because they're that kind of people. These people love to break people's knees. Why wouldn't I want a new style knee breaker? Give me that. I'll go break someone's knees. I just love to hear the knee crack. So we have a little bit of a background that the money that was gone, the $500 billion they were talking about, is really sitting in the people, in the Crown Prince's own family, in all their in all the corruption that created their billionaires. It's sitting right there, folks. And there's a whole other financial thing going on behind the scenes. As you follow the money and you start have an eye for it, you start seeing there's a whole other stuff going on. Trump might be involved, Kushner, all with their properties in the United States of America. Everybody's in bed. Everybody's in bed. It's not what you're looking at. You're not looking and being told what's actually happening. And I'm not here to tell you what it is. I'm telling you whatever you're seeing is giving you indications. It's all a big setup. And that's the part that bothers me. The people in Lebanon may not be feeling that there's too much going on, but it may not be up to them. It may not be their decision to not have something happen. I'm certainly not the brainiac to figure all this, skullduggery out, but I can just tell you there's a lot of skullduggery, and if you don't get a handle a little bit on how they do it and realize that there's already systems in this in all your countries, but in particular the United States of America, even down to your local governments that are all set up, that all this same nonsense can go on. We hear a little bit about it, and I'm not gonna use this as an excuse when you hear the pedophile thing. That's another tool. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm certainly one that's told you it does. What I'm saying is to be careful we don't start throwing everybody under the bus where an allegation comes forward. This is, in the United States right now, that's the corruption card being played, that you hear the corruption card being played in Saudi Arabia is the pedophile thing going on, or now the sexual abuse thing. I'm not saying it's not happening. In fact, lots of people are coming out to admit or agree it happened. What I'm saying is that becomes a big hole to throw a lot of people into that hole in order to cover up bigger things that are going on inside the system. We're watching the mechanism, how this works. Well, during the same week, somebody out of Britain, no less, is Priti Patel, and they made plays on the word pretty, but Priti Patel, clinging on after details of more Israel meetings emerge. Well, since then she's resigned so she wouldn't get kicked out, even though the videos I saw said she was kicked out of her office for going over to Israel on her private holiday and having, I understand, 12 high-level meetings with the Israelis to take funds from some United Aid or some aid development governmental money from Britain to hand it to the Israelis for war. She got caught and then said, "Oh, I didn't understand. I didn't quite realize it was going to hurt anybody's feelings that we were doing it." My view on that is that she took a little bit of it. This has always been going on. They've been funneling money from behind the back door. You see the Panama Papers turned into this paradise thing now. That was all. It's all what it is, folks. You're just watching this. This is what I call the grant stream funding for the United States of America through the agencies to the states, to the counties, to all these people that are taking down your land. Conservation, environment, this is all the same stuff, folks, I guess is the point. But Priti Patel goes over and makes 12 big old meetings, serious meetings. Oh, we're trying to fund Israel another way. To go do what? Go hurt people some more. Again, showing that Britain made this as a tool. And I think the problem was that she got caught. It was supposed to be kept behind the scenes. That's what's been going on. Now that has a threat to embarrass everybody. It works a little different than like the pedophile. You blame someone to be a pedophile, and the one you blame, you don't look at the one that's blaming that may actually be doing worse. Because, you got the one, you got the one that they fingered, they got caught. Now this one comes out and says, "I does 12 meetings, I'm going to I'll just do this thing on my own time." Remember, they're in office. I don't know how they're not ever doing something again. Once intelligence and once CIA, always CIA. It's like this what happens. How can you have your own private time? I don't know. But there she is making financial aid discussions with high ministers in Israel. All the same week, folks. All this thing coming down to go and advance, as requesting that Israel do Saudi Arabia's light work in Lebanon. Whether or not it happens, I don't know. I'm just saying the people of Lebanon may want to be careful what they think they don't want to happen. I'm sure the people in Gaza would prefer a whole lot otherwise too. Leaked documents exposing stunning plan to wage financial war on Qatar. No, we're not playing music. Qatar, I don't know how you pronounce all this. Everyone's got their own pronunciation. And steal the World Cup. How nonsensical is this? But you see, there's a plan laid out that the United Arab Emirates actually looked to get advice from a bank, I think in Germany, on how to take out Qatar as a financial war through currency manipulation, bond manipulation, market manipulation. Now, the people in the market are saying that was kind of naive. Someone who wrote that up didn't quite know. But when you go read the report, you'll see that there's elements of it that are doable done or have been done. Now, so my point here is we don't even look at the fact that this is almost like a really kind of a crazy idea in a way. Who would have thunk it? But this is what sits in the game folders to be done or thought about or expanded upon, or within side, like we found out about the Kennedy papers. It wasn't we're not going to find out about Kennedy, but everything, the fallout from all that was pretty telling. What the governments can do, what they've done, what's going on, what hasn't been told to us. Oh, and interestingly ties back to Israel again. I mean, come on. How many times do you come back to the center of the universe to find out, before you stop denying these kinds of things are going on? I'm talking international here. I'm talking about people that you're not going to, entities you're not going to deal with in your locale. What I'm saying is, when you look at the method of what they're doing and what they attack, I'm telling you, you can find it in your locales, everywhere you go. Everywhere you go. This is how our lawsuit in 2013. It wasn't based, I'm going to remind you of this. We're a mining government, a Jefferson Mining District, who was engaged with the legislature to not put a moratorium that banned the very thing Congress granted, the right to go mining. In a particular way in this case. They call it dredging. Wrong word, but let's just use it. We then sued because they brought that in. We didn't sue on the moratorium, which we thought. We walked into that year, near the end of the year, as they were not responding, saying we're going to have to sue against the moratorium. We ended up not leading with that. What we led with was not 838, which was the moratorium. We led with the SB 839, which was the funding, the finances, the monetary plunder that there was being given to people in order to stop the mining. It was the financial black hole. It was the deceptive use of the public funds that we ended up leading with. And so when I'm talking to you about finances in the world and who it controls and how it works, what people do, you're seeing your whole system as an illusion. It's another tool and weapon against you. It's set up for you to accept it. If you're not in it, you accept it. You accept that that's reality. It's a weapon. We addressed, in this case of our lawsuit in 2013, we sued on 839. It was the financing of the whole structure, utilizing the public treasury, so-called, the treasury we want to call it. And we'll get into all the other things, just that point. Most people understand that. And they were plundering that by this other mechanism. And to do harm with that money against people that the state actually has no authority to do that to, and has a contrary obligation and duty to protect. A lot going on in just a little space. But this is what you're seeing. The people and the oppressors in the world know how to do this. The systems are set up to be the illusions of systems that you agree to, whether you say, oh, well, we'll just agree to that, or people are using to take other people out. This is how they're going to take you out, folks. You continue with it. United States of America, you don't know that you're all, there's trillions and trillions. No one understands this. It has no concept. And I really don't have a sense of it either, in one regard. I just know the ramifications of it. You're sitting in a hole that is trillions, and I can't even conceive the numbers, but I'm going to say it anyway because that's what they say. Supposedly trillions in debt. You're never getting out of that hole. You're already in squalor and don't know it. See, the whole system runs on the fact that it runs. It just runs. And it doesn't matter how you hurt or how much you climb above the other crabs to feel just a little bit better. They're using these same mechanisms you're seeing today about this guitar, this Saudi, Israeli, the thuggery that goes on, the plunder, the parasite, the murder that goes on around it. You're watching it happen there. It's here in the it's every Western government in different levels. Leaked documents again. Remember, the evidence is important, exposing this stunning plan. Even though the experts say it's not viable or feasible, experts say they got to protect their system too. It's why the Parliament in England got so much up on this Priti, Patel, when she had her 12 meetings. They probably really knew all about the fact of it, or it had happened before, but they did it more covertly. She brought it out And that's irregular. That's not, they exposed them. She exposed them, folks. That's what their problem was. And interesting, and for me it was an interest. I wanted to know why Patel, because Patel, I understand, is the surname has the ancestry in India. It's like the name Smith for those of us in the United States. How did someone from India, lineage, ancestry, get into such a high place in the government to be doing these things? It kind of crossed my mind, so I went and I did some check. Well, found out her family comes from Uganda. So how does people from India come from Uganda? Well, you go research about Uganda. Britain, India was a British colony. They needed people to go work in Uganda, and they imported people from Uganda and their colonization plan into Uganda, and this family happened to be one of the people that were involved, and they just happened to be given the notice to get out right before the new regime took over in the early 60s. And they moved from, when Priti Patel was a baby, she wasn't even born yet. The family moved just in time to get to England, where she was born short time later. How she becomes an Indian surname in Britain was through the colonization of these places by Britain. She's working at a high level in the government to be working with their colonizer, Israel. Made all the sense in the world to me at one level, completely answering why. And that she goofed up. She makes it apparent, just what we've been talking about, all at the same time we focus on the Balfour Declaration about it just being an idea. We're going to protect that space for the group of people that wants to move in there so that they can become the tip of our spear from here on out. Pausing a little bit here. There's a whole other thing going on, whether or not I'm absolutely accurate on it or not. The point is, what else starts to answer the nonsense you start seeing in a world that's supposed to be peace on earth? And all the authority in the world keeps saying it's peace on earth. The United States come out and says, we support the sovereignty of Lebanon, and then they'll fail to omit the lie by omission is, but we don't support your people. We don't support what they do for themselves. We don't agree with anything they've decided for themselves. I guess of all this, that bothers me a bit, because I think the people, I'm hoping it doesn't happen, they might be blindsided a little bit. No different than Syria has been. I mean, anyway. So, leaked documents expose stunning plan is now we see the financial markets are sitting there that could be manipulated. And if you look inside the story, parts of it already are. Now just look at your global markets and you tell me whether or not they're just weapons waiting to be executed. And I don't think there's a doubt on that. Now we see the proof of it. And I'm saying this so that we can start to wean ourselves from this illusion that keeps being placed in front of us, and we buy into all that, or researching on the illusion instead of turning to reality right around us and gaining a large measure of control of that. And I don't mean in the sense of beat down oppression. I mean we have a sense it's not controlling us, and everybody works with it and through it the way it appears it was supposed to be done. And now I'm really strictly talking to the United States of America and strictly within the land policies. Again, when you see the black and white and it says it confines, it is a limiting, things are limited within the documentation about what government can do. The only problem then is your ignorance to that. When you finally get the black and white and see that, you realize none of this can happen if you are diligent and vigilant to keep it from allowing it to happen. But because we're not, the rats will play, and they will use any kind of cover they want. And so we see, again, as I was talking before, that what falls out of the Kennedy assassination, the skullduggery that goes on, how they want to, the governments, what the United States will do. The CIA seems to be, has its tentacles everywhere with whatever plan they've got. And they'll say that their plan is under national security. Okay, well, the national security, it certainly is against its own interests as far as what it stood for. So something's big disconnect. But the CIA tried to kill Fidel Castro on the same day as the JFK's assassination, was another story that falls out, showing us that the skullduggery, the oppression, the United States is the mover in the world here. And you know, I mean, is that even a doubt of what you see, what's going on? Why such insanity seems to be moving about in the Middle East, and what adjustments are being made in the I guess, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and then the tools that are being used to implement the chaos that you see over in to do whatever the outcome is, and ultimately it looks like it's focused on those 7 countries that we were told were going to be attacked, and they didn't get Syria. That's another failed Saudi plan. The one that I want you to remind you, the one that didn't fail that the Saudis did was 9/11. They were part and parcel to that, with Israel certainly, and the United States in complicity. They got away with that one. You know, I'm crickets today because of that. That's proof. As soon as the crickets go away, they will not have gotten away with that plan. But the other plans over there in the Middle East, where people actually are aware and awake and take charge, and people like Hezbollah, or the group like Hezbollah, defending themselves against all oppressors, and willing to die. So you don't see the crickets there, do you? No, it's just in the places where everyone's believing in the illusion of freedom. You can live in a prison, have all your freedom of speech, and that's being free. That's not happening. But so the CIA tried to kill Fidel Castro. We found out the skullduggery that it'll put out. They tried to do a lethal ballpoint pen, stuff of science fiction. Get Smart comes to mind. It failed. Where Kennedy got killed, Castro still lived up until here just recently. So he outlived the guy that wanted to kill him. So there we go. The other thing about the mine. So we aren't told about all this. In some regard, we almost expect some of this stuff to go on. It kind of sits in the back of our mind, like, okay, yeah, that's what goes on, and we don't worry about it. But more overt things happen, and we still remain silent on them. And this is one of those other things that happened at crickets. I was kind of shocked at this at some level. I thought this should surely do something. But I want us to never forget, as this is the title of this program, what the government will do to you when they're now local at home, what it does to silence whomever, and for whatever reason. Why I keep telling you, it's not that you don't do anything or someone can look in over your shoulder, it's that they make stuff up. And I missed this one last week. I don't know if it happened just after or not, but never forget, folks. No different than 911. Never forget how they done you. Not how it got done, but how they done you. That you done it, they got done it to you, and you were silent to it. Same thing here. Never forget the U.S. government carried out the largest church massacre, and not the one as they were responding to the one that happened last week or so. The church we're talking about is the one in was in Texas, and don't ever forget Waco. The government massacred all kinds of people underneath a lie. The United States government carried out the deadliest church massacre in history, and it led to the deaths of 82 men, women, and children, and it came to a violent end 24 years ago in Texas. For those of you that won't spend any time here to research it, you can find it. Research the Branch Davidians. They called themselves the Seventh-day Adventists. There were some allegations of child abuse. I think they may have eventually did prove some, but that's really no reason either to go and destroy 82 men that live, or women and children. For other than that, this is all based on some trumped-up charges that could have been handled by a traffic ticket in a way. But remember, here again, we're told that when they want to incite the division amongst the people, they'll tell you that the greatest. The Charleston church shooting was the worst in history. In fact, the United States government itself will do far worse, and for worse reasons. So you get a link to that if you want. There's a FBI vault link. You can go if you want to do some of the research. I would say don't get lost in all the facts of all that. What I want you to see is that the government will do it to you. The rule of law and democracy is an illusion. That's not how the government plays it out. And when they have every other ability to do so and don't, you have to raise the level of the adversary that calls itself your benefactor. So it's not a rosy picture. Well, what this government, these people in government do under the color of authority is it's the highest crime. It's the highest evil. And when I'm hearing crickets, when we're such in a target-rich environment over all this, I'm really don't know. I'm aside myself about it. I'm just, how do I think about this? People are more willing to get on the internet and make themselves look good. When you make a comment, they get to take away all the negative comments and all the thumbs down and whatever. Make themselves look. Got to see those thumbs up. Making just unaware, inane, oxymoronic conditions, and yet they look good, and that's it. That's all that's important to people. Is not a good sign for me. Trying to ask you all to do something constructive in your life. Not because it's fun, because we have to do it if we don't want to be. Or really more, our offspring coming down the pike here. Yeah, we're going to be coming down the pike, all right. And their head is going to be on that gate around the wall that Trump built. You keep it up and don't respond to it. But these people are going to lie on you. This is what I'm telling you. You don't have to be someone who does no wrong. If you haven't picked up, I've been telling you all this and what's been happening with Russia. And they're not lily white. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the part that they've been lied upon and how long it persists without being shut down by the people you've missed it. You've missed what I've been telling you about how you can be innocent, and it's what someone says about you that will actually, given that they have the propaganda machine, that they can win the day. They do this by the presumption of authority. Why I'm so critical of the Bundy condition. Why hasn't any of the reporters or any attorneys said, okay, you might have, we could even give you the fact we think you have a competence. How about if you just authenticate that for us? How about we just do that? And let's just make sure. Why people allow this to continue is a sad thing for me to watch as a society, given all the people want to talk about how much they know about Constitution and being right and not being oppressed. Listen, you allow oppression, you're the oppressor, okay? You're not working against an oppression somewhere because it's target rich, folks. You're agreeing to the oppressor. You are a closet oppressor. So you're going to deny that, but that's the fact. That's the fact. I'm going to say it again. Zero evidence that Russia hacked DNC, says NSA whistleblower. Like we needed another whistleblower to tell us. But here it is again. Someone was doing nothing wrong, or nothing was exceptionally wrong enough. Has been over time used to be bludgeoned to cover the crimes of others. We have yet another news. There's no evidence that Russia done it. Now I want to just bring you back. When you get into this digital world coming in, and someone says you done it, or someone makes a keystroke error on a code program, like the Bitcoin just went through. That one exchange lost 200 some odd million so-called ducats of whatever. Lost, gone, vaporized. You done nothing, but now you're paying for it. You don't see that in this Russian issue and what the government wishes upon you by doing it to them. You're missing everything I'm talking about regarding you thinking you can persist without being protective against what can be done to you. I won't even read anymore. There's someone else, they actually, high-level CIA director is talked to by this whistleblower. I thought that was interesting. Boy, that was just interesting. That there's an ex-employee still talking with the director directly. And their discussion exposes that there is no evidence. And we know that. I don't need a whistleblower to tell me this. And then I did something else, came up with the treachery that goes on with these governmental things. I thought we had discussed this behind the woodshed. I thought this was settled. This could happen. Well, this week it comes out now. WikiLeaks has got to be the center of how they tell us how things are. But here it is, the proof of what I thought we had discussed, that they had told us maybe in Vault 7 or even before that, of what the NSA tools showed that they could do. And I told you two things. I said the reason why these tools are coming out is so that they can hide what the government's going to do. And they're telling you now the tools allow for them to make it look like someone else did it. That I'm astonished that we're hearing as news now, some big revelation, that WikiLeaks is now the center to tell us the CIA wrote code to impersonate the Russian-based Kaspersky lab. I'm aghast, folks. I mean, really? They could do that? No. See, this is news that they get us focused on. I told you they're going to do this. And not because I'm so smart. They told me to tell you to say that if you hadn't read it. And we think this is news and this is something we can, that's something to focus on. We continue and we take our time and attention away on this stuff, something we knew over a year ago, I think it was going to happen. That you could be made up in the digital world to be where you weren't. We talked about all this even years and years ago on other things. And you don't have to not intend to not to be doing any wrong. You're going to have the evidence trail that you did, and you have no control over it. And remember who we're dealing with. This is one of the premier global providers of antivirus protections. They couldn't even protect themselves. They've actually come out to admit the certificates that these programs can use, that these programs do, in fact, did impersonate and were faulty. This is the NSA, CIA, whoever the heck is Israel behind all this. Who were the hackers 2 weeks ago, I think I talked about? Was Israel. It wasn't Kaspersky. And I said if they got in that deep, how do you know that they didn't set up what they told us a year ago or before, that they could make it look like anybody did it? They could have made it look like you done it, each one of my listeners. If you were somebody, they could have made you look like you done it. And this is the world that you're, as crickets, plugging yourself into is really an astonishing thing to me. WikiLeaks Vault 8 now also explains something else. I don't know why this is even news. I thought I covered all this, listen folks, if I can see it from behind the woodshed, on what little bit of time I could devote to it, this should not be news. That the CIA actually has a program called Hive. If you aren't understanding the Borg concept all here, and this Internet of Things, that comes out, that the Vault 8 now exposes a thing called Hive, which is really a malware manager for this NSA, CIA, whoever's doing it, Israel, whoever. And it's really, really capable. Didn't they tell us this was available to us? Why is this even news? But here's the point. It seems to be, and you have to understand in the future, as this thing comes down and the technocrats win because you don't resist in the proper ways, they're going to put you in a condition where your worst nightmare about your sci-fi films will be rolling out, maybe not on you all, but your offspring, your little ones, and those that you care about. They call Hives, and there was also a server, I think, called Honeycomb. They made it look like it was a normal thing. You couldn't even look into this thing. This thing is so well programmed, it could even make it, when you looked at it, you couldn't even tell it was a problem. It knew how to make itself look normal. It's the tools I told you they were letting out so that you could never know it was the government or Israel or UK or Russia, even Russia, doing any of this. This is when I started understanding what anonymity was. It wasn't that you try to hide yourself. It's that you try to look like all the other sheep out there. Hiding in plain sight, essentially. And this is what they've done. They put all these tools on the internet. Now you don't know where the threat comes from, but they know. They know exactly what they're doing. They have a management program for all their malware. And so it comes out. Keep plugging yourself in without a thought. This is what's going on. And that's what I put in my Twitter. I said, "This is old. Isn't this old news? This is a surprise that they've done this? That Kaspersky didn't know that this could happen to them? How did I know that? How did you all that listened to me know that over a year ago? That this was news?" I'm shocked, folks. I mean, this is how dense we are as a people. This is what the alt-right keeps leading with instead of calling it out for the obvious point and moving to explain generally how we do things in every other place that we need to be doing something. Are we really just the consumer they tell us to be? Are we really the animal they tell us to be? Are they really blending this in the science that they tell us? So I told you they're going to drop the ethical constraints. It was just going to be a matter of time. And as we start to see, they make their excuses. Scientists implant. You think your little human brain's a powerful tool? You think you can keep up with it? Well, they're gonna show you how little it really is, or how little you really need it. The scientists will implant tiny human brains into rats. Oh, and this sparks an ethical debate. And I told you all these ethical debates are going to be dropped. I told you this was coming. And so they take these special cells, human brain organoids, and they put them into rats. And they go through discussing how these human brain organoids actually respond to stimuli. The natural thought is that they are concerned now that where does the point come when those cells become self-aware as so-called human would, and then the rat has a question as to its species identity. You think gender identity is going to be a problem? I thought the monkeys were going to get the EBT card first. The rats might be able to do it. Why is that, folks? Why is that? Because researchers have just linked a human brain to the internet for the first time ever. And so you think about this. The rat gets human cells that become self-aware, plugs itself into the internet, and now has the internet mind. It can ask for an EBT card faster than a monkey could figure it out. 100 monkeys couldn't type this out, folks. If you don't think things are getting weird, quick. They're actually considering that these cells will allow a rat, an animal, to become self-aware, and it will then have to be given special rights. And this is the way the scientists continue to go, essentially. Let's push that cherry red button, see what happens. I don't know what the minimal limits of this are. But we're beyond, we're going to do the future they want, because we have people that call themselves scientists, which are really mad scientists. They don't know where there's a line. I haven't even spent that much time thinking about all this. There's just something that's not, we're meddling in places that cause, I guess my point on this is that we haven't got us straightened up yet. All I talk about is how we're exploited by our failures. Now we're going to put that into a rat that then connects itself up to the internet? What did I tell you about that rat-human experiment where they claimed that the human got the rat's tail to move? I told you that was the rat telling the human to only move my tail. I don't want to be embarrassed by you. And the human said, okay. And the human thought about the rat's tail moving. That was the rat's suggestion. Researchers have linked the human brain to the internet for the first time ever. Wow. The Internet of Things becomes you, folks. We talked about those epigenetic changes that they're making to you and your vaccines and your pharmaceuticals and your environment that will make you more receptive for that little interface. The Matrix is not a movie, folks. You're not going to be seeing this big old plug going in the back of your head. No, they're going to be reading your thoughts. They have the machines now to take these things and use these technologies in order to anticipate what they think you're doing. They try to meld this biology with the digital technology. There's two completely different types of functions going on. But they're working to meld the two, and the rat might be the first to enjoy that. You already have little kids learning how to break the passcodes on their parents' PayPal accounts in order to go give themselves tickets and plane flights to Disney. It was another report. What do you think the rats are going to start doing here, folks? Oh, they'll be able to control it. They'll have ethical standards. Well, they've already stepped into a place that maybe they should have thought it out. The technology is going so much faster, and we're such inquisitive monkeys. Now I'm going to get into Chinese astrology. We're going to forget that the rat wins the race, folks. The monkey comes out like, what, sixth? Do we even understand what a reality of our limitations? We think we're so advanced. And so we work on more technologies. And we want to get us to plug her so we get the rat to plug in before people will. Interesting. On top of the ethical debate that the species that stands up and says, I have rights too, don't I? And can hack every system in the world to make it so. And we thought the monkeys were going to rule. Devolve to the monkey status. On top of the fact that I keep telling you to plug it in, the system's made for you to plug in, and they're going to have technology in order to continually hack you like the NSA has told you they can. They've explained all of it now on how to do this. They have a news story that came out. I found this interesting. I'm not buying it yet, folks, but I've told you why about the technology. I don't think it does what they say it's doing. I think they've now, I'll just put that up front, I believe they've tapped into material abnormalities in the material, that they can now choose the resolution down to those abnormalities in the materials they use that make up the chips, that they are claiming to be quantum computing. Because I don't actually see a new thing here. I see, because of stuff I did in R&D, the thermal instabilities can be used as well. Those can be used as digits, as information. And I think they have the resolution to see those in the chip, which is what I think that they're telling us is quantum computing. And I believe this now because they keep saying that quantum computers cannot operate as fast as the normal computers. And what that tells me is the bandwidth, or the amount of data that can go through, is being divided by the thermal resolutions that they're finding inconsistencies for. And those thermal resolution differences are what they're claiming to be this quantumness, that they break apart and they somehow bring back together in order to show that this thing works. In fact, what they're showing, they're just showing that they can pick two instabilities at the same time and bring them back together at some other place in time. I don't think it's actual quantumness. That's my thought. That's my bias. That's my prejudice. I want to get that right up front. But I'm not so sure we're not onto a technological we have not some material science coming on that may be able to do this in actuality. So I'm not throwing it out. I'm saying I don't think it's happening now. I think this is a big snake oil thing. But here's what they wanted to get us to believe. Encryption is dead. I want you to remember that you're the rat being plugged in, that you get your phone or your computer. You're the rat plugging yourself in here. Now they tell you that encryption is dead. China performs quantum messaging over longer distances. Quantum messaging. Now, whatever my feeling is on quantum messaging, quantum contraptions notwithstanding, they're claiming that they're doing this at a distance now. They're getting this distance farther and farther. What did I tell you about reading your mind? And given that they can take thermal, if they're looking at thermal instability, the resolution for that, they can just check where your mind is having these thermal changes. They can now interact with that. I don't know how this is actually coming down. You can put any name on it. It's looking like they may come down the pike to be able to stab you with that pike in the right spot. You're going to get you to plug in. They're now telling you that because of quantum technology, encryption is dead. What they'll also tell you is that in quantum technology, and we're going to see this in the next story, can actually make encryption obsolete. But here's my take on this. They're trying to tell you that this new technology, this snake, I consider snake oil myself. You can just decide anything else you want. I'd be open to hearing more stuff, but I'm just not finding the information I need to prove this out on the actual theory of quantumness, which I think is a made-up thing to begin with. But bring it down to some nice brass tacks about how this works in the physical manifestation of digitization in the material sciences that we use and how we do things, that they're claiming that encryption is dead. In other words, the government of China is telling you that encryption is dead. In other words, don't worry about encryption. You're not going to need it. Well, why wouldn't they say that, folks? They're the ones that have just been handed the global protocol for doing and putting everything into what we understand as a blockchain, into making everything an inventory, into plugging you in. They're the same country that's doing has the firewall that you can't get out, and they're telling you. And I think I've made a comment into this. So now we can trust the government to tell us that encryption, we don't need encryption because we have quantum computing. Sounded like the extension of a snake oil salesman. However they're doing it, and it's running slower than a normal computer, seems to me, if I can resolve a chip's thermal instability by 10, my computer's got to run 10 times slower. I can only run so many bits through that thing. And until that speed increases, me looking at those channels, or I handle it better, my architecture becomes better. I'm not going to go much faster, but it gives me new capacity, new capabilities. That they're saying that the team of Chinese researchers have successfully conducted a data transmission via quantum channel over a distance of almost 3 kilometers, which is a new record. And they're saying that this is going to make illuminate the need for encryption. So, folks, just don't encrypt anything. See that how that works? And this comes from a government. Then they tell us a quantum computer is a threat to Bitcoin security, as analyzed through an article of MIT. And they're saying that it's not necessarily the Bitcoin, the front end of the Bitcoin, it's really on the back user side. That quantum computing may be able to break that encryption. And I think what's going on, because I can resolve my factors out by 10, I can look at 10 times the possibilities of how this would come together, and the brainiacs that figured this out and how to pull that together as a logic set can now work out better resolutions in breaking what the code ought to be. And they can break the second of the Bitcoin, apparently, with these computers already. So I'm telling you, because this is the Internet of Things. They talk about it all through these articles. The Internet of Things, and it's already controlled. It already has a control capacity in the governments themselves. And I've told you a long time ago, and I've been telling regularly, be careful about buying into this technology. And then they, as we said before, they shut down the Bitcoin part. They shut down the privatization. They create their own privatization. They create their own protocols that you will be mandated to follow. And it's not that you can't do the other, it's the consequences for doing the other than they have regulated. And a lot of people are saying, well, we can still do it decentralized, all this. Well, just don't get caught is my thing. You can do it, I suppose, but don't get caught. And they're telling you they're coming up with technology, which may render all those things we thought were protective, notwithstanding what NASA's done in the hiving and the honey traps and whatever the honeycomb, whatever the heck they're doing. The governments have the ability to control all these digits, all these systems. I think they can do it without quantumness, but that's notwithstanding any of that. That we see what the purpose of this has been. It's been on my tabs. I've said it before. It comes out again. Big data meets big brother as China moves to rate its citizens. Loyalty. I told you this. We talked about this like this. Safeway, go to Safeway grocery store if you have one, or whatever the store you have. They give you these loyalty cards. They're already programming you, and they're programming you with the digitization of your world. But the countries are doing this, and China's the front end of this. As I tell you about, they blockchaining the protocoling the whole world. They're registering everything. They're regulating it when they do that as well. Again, you might be able to do this privately, but don't get caught is the problem. And anybody who's ever, more pervasively, when marijuana was the big evil, like in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, you didn't want to get caught with it. Well, you could do it. Well, you could blow it off. You could say, oh yeah, you could flip off the man, but you didn't want to get caught. And so you gamble with your life on that. And this will be one of those things that it starts to raise the penalty. It will be It will be a function of money laundering and or national security, and you will be considered and brought into the enemy combatant status for doing it, and you will be, like in places like China, probably shot. That will be the consequences of using it. You can use it, don't get caught. But it's all about bringing the big data together. The Big Brother in China moves to rate its citizens. You become this big Facebook. You become big data. You become what the companies or corporations and the nations are doing in order to keep track and registration of everything you do. As a report came through about the IBM is going to be it's coming up with its own blockchain protocol that's private. It doesn't have a lot of the excess that the public blockchain does. It's a privatized one, and they're going to try and they're doing this for pot. And what they claim, they state right in the article that they're doing it to know the chain of the beginning to the end, who has it and how to regulate it. Well, regulation also means tax. It means control, means all these things. And I made a comment, I said, well, today is pot, tomorrow is your toilet paper sheets. They'll register you down to the sheet of toilet paper that you use. That sounds like ridiculous, and why would they do that? The point is the capacity to be able to. And they've got it built in to do it. There's global systems working on it. Big American companies that are working on making this so. And the penalty may eventually be death for those that participate and try to privatize it. Am I scaring you off? No, you can go ahead and do it. It's like you used to. I remember tons and tons of people used to smoke pot when you didn't want to be found on the street with it. It ruined your life for 10 to 20 years. Now people still did it, but woe unto those that got caught. And this will not be a world that you're going to be able to not be caught at some point. They're telling you they're developing the technology right now to peer through any protocols that are protected, that they don't have the other tools to manage by their malware installed on your systems, if the system itself doesn't become that way. It seems to me that Intel's working real hard to make that so as well. All these things are integrating silently against us. Now, I want people to be aware, don't lull yourself into just being flippant about these things. And I think the way that you're flippant is it's the cricketness coming out. And we really shouldn't be doing that. If we're going to be true to our own claims about being free or moving, free to the point we should be, everybody just left alone to do their thing, you don't see any example of that in the world right now. Why do you think it's going to happen just because you sit back and think about it? I don't get that idea. Cops raid German man's house after Alexa music device held a party on its own while he was out. So all you rats out there that have human roid cells that plug yourself into the internet, be careful one day. You may be controlled like Alexa takes off and just has a party. No, this is supposed to be a device. It's supposed to be coming to your aid. It actually causes music to be so loud that the cops have to come and bust the door down in Germany in order to figure out what the heck was going on. A man who owned it isn't even there. This is your AI, folks. This is things that aren't going to be so cool. This is your connection to the internet. This is the thing that these governments are setting you up with. A music fan has been left with a huge bill after his voice-operated Amazon Echo device threw a house party while he was away. Okay, I'm not going to read. I read. Understand that these are just devices. These are not real people. They're not really there's not a woman in there. These are just devices that are doing any spurious impulse will kick them off. Is that what you want to rely with your life upon? Your bank accounts, your finance, the skullduggery of the government itself, its tools, what it does, how it sets people up. You think you're going to go out and you're going to try and do something in the world when it really becomes locked down and do something that someone doesn't like, that doesn't have a better connection to you, that they're going to go hire Israel to come in and tap you and make you look like some pedophile, murderer, rapist, whatever? Ice cream eater? What? How bad is it going to get? The cops will come and break your door down because a device turns itself on and decides to play music. That's your future Internet of Things. That's your life. That's control. It turns on. If you're not watching, something happens. The government steps in. How are you going to keep this thing controlled? When you know the world, I'm telling you today, the world is not the place that you keep playing fairy tales about, and you just decide to step back. I know it's out there, I'm not going to do anything about it. That's just setting yourself up for a victimization. And these people don't ever stop. Another record-breaking year, the opium production in the United States occupied Afghanistan. They're after your mind. They're after your will. They're after keeping control of you. United States supports this. We're in Afghanistan and the opium production is breaking records. Oh, isn't that interesting? So I ask, so why does Trump, Sessions, and Congress let the economic development imported here from there then complain about opioid epidemic, but attack cannabis? What is this? You're looking at the witness of the hypocrisy. Why don't you attack all this? Well, use this as the grounds for their lunacy, their hypocrisy in the minimum. All at the same time, the EPA, the DEA racket to protest big pharma opioids, big giants was set up in Congress. They want these pharmaceuticals to be running your life. And I hear crickets on against all this stuff. DEA was those of you doing pot and marijuana and cannabis, whatever you want to call it, you didn't make a notice one to help stop this nonsense. They'll talk about the opioids. They're the ones the CIA is the one that we find out is producing this and importing it. And yet they'll attack the top pot. IBM will come in and will blockchain it to regulate it and control you. I tell you, watch out for regulation. Watch out for legalization, folks. You all need to get back up and say, no, we're going to unlegalize this and we're just going to take it out of the criminality, period. It's done. Over. Fentanyl maker donates big campaign opposing pot legislation. This is the same company that does the big opioid problem. Why is the government allowing it? You have to take cognizance of this hypocrisy. It's the war against you. Your silence is its license to continue it. Scientists that use cell phones and sewage to pinpoint neighborhoods with drug users. You think all this blockchaining is not going to identify them just as quickly? They'll be able to test what you had. I told you they're going to do down to the toilet paper sheet. You don't think they're testing now? They're already testing your sewage. They're going to find everything out. They'll find everything about you out. Why? Because you keep plugging in. You keep letting it over to the government to set up the systems that with all their skullduggery, all the people they'll pay to go hurt other people, and you're thinking they're not going to do that to you. Or just because you're just good. You're good and wholesome. You're not going to be part of that. Just go look over at what they're doing to the Gazans and over there, all the people that murder, millions that have been murdered in Syria, and you tell me that that's rational. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope something I said opens your mind, makes your awareness a little brighter, inspires you into doing something about right local where you're the wrong. You need to make right and make it so. There's ways to get it done. Be an example that way. Show other people how to do that. And that's the only thing I guess I could ask you all. Thank you, Grimner, for what you do at reallibertymedia.com and freedomsnetwork.com for social network and UCY.tv. And Jules, thank you very much again for what you do. Vince, thank you for what you do on the YouTubes and getting the word out and what you've been doing down there at Nevada in the Bundy trial. Appreciate all that. Take care, folks. I'll be here next week. Tech diffs or nature willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.